So this video is called What I Feed My Chickens. And this is the last day for me to have some of these chickens. I'm actually selling off some. I can only have a limited number here because of the size of my coop and because my county only limits me a certain number of hens. So anyway, every so many days I go through my refrigerator and I clean out leftovers. Now, of course, I stick to whatever chickens can have. I stay away from the 9 deadly foods or however many foods that, like things from the nightshade family and stuff that chickens aren't really allowed to have. I don't give them any bread or crackers or potato chips or anything like that. It's strictly dinner leftovers, including meats, stir fry. They also get things like cucumber peelings and the bitter ends of cucumbers. I had some leftover cheese sauce, which I don't give them a lot of dairy, but it was just a tiny little bit, so I threw that in there. Some dip. And then I put it in the food processor, and I add either a little beef broth, vegetable broth, or God forbid, chicken broth. And I process it up, and then it becomes this sort of gruel. It's incredibly densely protein-rich food that they absolutely love. This is not the main source of their diet. They get grains as the main source of their diet, but this completely, totally supplements all of that. This is all stuff that would have ended up in the compost, minus the meats. Any meats would have, of course, meat and dairy would have either ended up going to my dogs or being fed to squirrels around here. Well, so I'm trying to cut back on feeding squirrels because squirrels are trying to get into my chicken pen. So I'm trying to cut back on feeding the wildlife, and I'm trying to feed my livestock now. Switching completely over. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of a baby food gruel, and it's nice and cold on these hot days. I can just come out and just pour some on a paper plate, and they, as you can see, they just go crazy over it. And it's a good way to get rid of leftovers. I still have things that go in the compost. Things that they can't have. They also get like leftover watermelon, and they get a corn on the cob if we didn't eat it for supper and it's sat in the fridge for 2 days and gets sort of dried out, and they just devour that kind of stuff. So it really helps stretch the budget as far as feeding my chickens, feeding my little flock, and it is just a great way to keep my food in my refrigerator completely recycled all the time, cleaned out and recycled. And the chickens love it. They absolutely love it. And this is an easy way for them to get the beef and different types of foods into their system that normally they probably wouldn't get. It's a lot of crude protein, not to mention all the veggies that go into it. And then it's liquid, so there's no waste whatsoever. You could see they kind of wipe it off their beaks. But as soon as the plate will be completely clean. There won't be anything left. There's nothing left for to lay around for the flies to get on. And even if a fly does get on that plate, they tend to chase the flies off right away, so it's not a big deal. But there's just no leftover. There's no waste this way. There's no waste on my part or on their part. So yeah, they're baby food gruel, just part of their diet. And just really, really check before you feed your chickens anything what they can and cannot have, and really stick to that. And another thing that I do is I do take the leftover chicken shells and I rinse them out completely. I put them in the oven until they start to turn at a very low temperature, just until they start to turn brown. And then you'll find that they're sort of like glass. They're very, very highly breakable at that point. And then I just roller pin them out in between 2 paper towels, and I sort of shake them on the ground, and they can peck at them at their leisure. And in that tiny of a pieces, they don't really recognize them as eggshells, so they're getting just a tiny bit of calcium back into their diet. And I'm not wasting any eggshells. I also powder some of the eggshells and put them directly on my roses and things, and then I supplement their diet with oyster shell, crushed oyster shell. So whoops, focus. So they do have that as a choice too. And I'm getting out of focus, so okay, just showing my baby food gruel for my chickens. All right, happy homesteading.